Alright, so this is a quick video for those in Algebra 2 Standard that will give you a brief look at the word problems that you did on the homework. So you're going to want to look at this. The first one is from page 123 that you guys did. Change the color here so we can look at our stuff differently. Determine the length of the side of each square. Okay, so number 21. We got two squares, one with side x, which makes you can make the assumption that the other side is going to be x, and one with side 2x, so we can make the assumption that the other side is 2x because squares have that property. The area of the larger square. Okay, first of all, area. You should know that that's length times width. You should connect the dots here and understand area as being length times width. The area of the larger square. The area of the larger square is 42 cubic centimeters more than the area of the smaller square. So if we know what the larger square is, it's going to be the small. It's not going to be equal to the smaller square. It's going to be the smaller square plus 42 centimeters squared. Okay. So the larger square being 2x in length on each side, the larger square will then be 2x squared. That's area. The smaller square being x, that would be x squared in area. Our job here is to solve for x, to figure out what the length of the smaller square is and the larger square. Okay, so 2x squared equals x squared plus 42. It's the larger square area is equal to the smaller square plus 42. So this becomes 4x squared equals x squared plus 42. You're aware of where that came from? 2x being squared, 2 squared, and x squared. So solving for x, we can subtract an x squared from both sides. Dividing by 3. Oops. Dividing by 3. I think 42 divided by 3 should be like 14. And then to solve for x, you will take the square root of both sides here and here to undo the square, because that's basically the opposite of each other. Sorry, getting a cold. And so your answer should be the x value should be positive or negative the square root of 14. Since we're dealing with length specifically, if your answer is both positive square root of 14 and negative square root of 14, usually we have two answers with this when we're dealing with arbitrary solutions. But because we're dealing specifically with distance here, length of one side of a square, this can only be the positive value of the square root of 14. This other one's useless. Okay, so this side length is the square root of 14 centimeters. Okay. And then this guy is 2 times the square root of 14 centimeters. Because 2 times x, and we figured that x was the square root of 14. You need to have the units there with you, because that really makes a difference in distance. We eliminated the negative answer being valid because we're dealing with distance. We're going to deal with distance again with making sure our units are proper. It's important that you look at this problem for practice. I'm going to change the color to do number 22. Okay, again we're dealing with the area. The area of the larger, which is length times width again, the larger square is decreased by 28 centimeters. Okay, so larger square is decreased by 28 centimeters squared. The result, that should equal, is half of the area of the smaller square. 1/2 the smaller square. Alright, so let's look at that. How does that work out? I'm going to erase some of this problem here. Some of the previous problem to do this one. So the area of the larger square, which is 2x times 2x, we figured that out before to be 4x squared, minus 28, is equal to half the smaller square, which was x squared. We're going to solve for x here again. I'm going to do two steps at once right now. I'm going to add 28 to both sides to get it to be positive instead of negative. I'm going to add 28 to get it over here, and I'm going to move this x squared over here. So I'm going to do 4x squared minus half x squared. That'll give me 3.5x squared, or if your calculator does it probably like this, it'll probably be 7 over 2x squared, okay, equals 28. And then you can divide by the fraction. So you take 28, divide by 7 over 2. Both sides, you get x squared alone. This side becomes 8. And then again, we take the square root, so x is equal to the square root of 8. And we have to reduce this if necessary. The square root of 14 before was not reducible because it's 7 times 2, and that's as far as you can go, so there's no pairs. Okay? The square root of 8 over here in the corner is 4 times 2, circle the 2. A 4 is 2 times 2, so we have 2 times 2 times 2 to be 8. So that means that the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 8. When we have a pair of 2's, square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that's equal to 2. So the square root of 8 should be 2 times the square root of 2. You can check that in your calculator. Square root of 8 gives you a decimal. 2 times the square root of 2 should give you the exact same decimal. So your value here, plus or minus the square root of 8, should be x is equal to plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2. And that's the answer. However, we want it in the terms that we need. Okay, so we want to find the side length of the smaller square, the side length of the larger square. So since we have two answers here, the negative one is invalid because we're dealing with distance. So x here, the answer for number 22 is the length here will be positive 2 times the square root of 2 centimeters. Units are important. We used units, centimeters squared for area. That means in distance, centimeters will be used. So over here for the larger square, we have 2 times x, 2 times 2 square roots of 2. Well, that reduces to 4 square roots of 2 centimeters. And there's your answer for the larger one in number 22. There are two answers, one for the smaller square and one for the larger square in number 22. Same for number 21. A distance for the smaller square and a length of side for the larger square. Don't forget to put the units on there when necessary. A second problem that I wanted to cover with you was the one before that on page 122, number 9 and 10. Determine the lengths of the sides of this rectangle. So this rectangle has a length here of x and a length here of 3x. So if we have to cover area, you know that 3x times x is going to be the area. Area is length times width. Hence, area will be 3x times x, or 3x squared. That should be easy. Now, number 9. The area of the rectangle is 45 centimeters squared. Find the lengths of the sides of the rectangle. Okay, so if the area is 45 centimeters squared, that means that the area being 3x squared, this is number 9. If 3x squared is the area, and the area is equal to 45 centimeters squared, we can solve for x. Divide by 3, and take the square root, plus or minus the square root of 15. Great. So we have a positive square root of 15 and a negative square root of 15. Because we're dealing with distance again, only the positive part will matter, because the negative one doesn't make sense. Distance isn't measured in negative units at all. And you think about 15, square root of 15 being broken down. 15 is 5 times 3. There's no pairs there. 5 and 3 are both prime. So this is finished. X is equal to the square root of 15. Units are centimeters. So our length is square root of 15 centimeters. That's one side length. Make sure you get the other side length to give you 3 square roots of 15 centimeters. We should have two answers for number 9 and number 10. Number 10. If the area is 54 centimeters squared, how does that work out? Well, the area is length times width, x times 3x, 3x squared. So the area is 3x squared, and the area is 54 centimeters squared. So how big are the lengths? X and 3x. All right, so divide by 3. 54 divided by 3 is 18. We'll take the square root of 18. We'll get plus or minus 18, right? And you and I both know that the negative one won't work out because we're dealing with distance here. So we have the square root of 18 centimeters. Does it break down? It does. It does, or at least we can check to see if it does. Okay, let's kind of go back here and look. Here, 15 breaks down from number 9. 15 breaks down into 5 and 3. And they're both prime, and you can stop there, and there are no pairs, and that's why we just keep it as square root of 15. in the matter of number 10, square root of 18 breaks down into 9 and 2. Circle the 2. 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. Circle the 3's. There's nothing else to break down. And notice we have a pair of 3's. When you have a pair of anything, that gives you that number. You can check in your calculator. The square root of 18 should equal 3 times the square root of 2. We have two 3's here and then a square root of 2. The two 3's create a 3. Alright, so our answer finished will be the positive part, not the negative part. We've eliminated the negative part. 3 times the square root of 2, and our units are centimeters. So that's the value of x. That is the one side length there. The other side length being 3x should be 3 times the square root of 2, so that should give you 9 square roots of 2 centimeters. 3 times the square root of 2. Okay. This part right here is 3 times 3 square roots of 2. 3 times 3 is 9. X was 3 square roots of 2, so we put it together there, and we have the units of centimeters in the end. So that is a couple of word problems that you may or may not see later on that you want to pay attention to.